Hey everybody, Scout Crafty here again, Mishmash Monday. Hope you had a fantastic weekend. We have a full episode today, so I'm not going to waste any time on the intro. We are going to get to that special saw given to me by an anonymous donor, Brian O'Hare, who wanted to remain anonymous. Beautiful saw, the DeWalt. You remember it? Let's go check it out. We're going to go through it, and we're going to have some fun today. Okay, first of all, let's talk about what this is. This is a DeWalt, and you can see here it says Mito-Miter box. Okay, this was a very popular saw. It is a direct descendant of the original radial arm saw invented by Raymond DeWalt, 1922. Got the patent about 1925. He invented this saw because he worked in a lumber mill, and he wanted to get a product that could kick out and produce more cuts than the traditional ways that they were doing it back then. And this was really popular, especially in lumber mills. Now, my buddy Brian bought the house, and this was installed in the garage, in the workshop by the previous owner. And Brian really never used it because, and rightly so, these are kind of a little tricky to use. But we're going to go through all that. But the first thing I want to do is we're going to clean this up. You can see the condition it's in. We have to put a end on the cord here because it was wired direct. You can see what it looks like. It's a little bit, just needs a little bit of cleaning, but it's in beautiful shape. It still has the original guard, the cast guard. And I'll show you how all these little gadgets work on this saw and why, if you're contemplating getting one, you shouldn't. Okay, now when putting these plugs on, this one here is a made in China one. This isn't a good one. I have some good ones, but I don't know what I'm going to do with this cord later on. But you can see what you do here is you have to make sure that you get it really close and tight here because you don't have a lot of room in this case to put it in. There are better cord ends. So when you tighten this down, you'll see here it has a combination Phillips. Okay, it's a Phillips here. You can see a Phillips will work, but that'll just get you to a certain torque. And then what you want to do is you have to go to a straight bladed screwdriver. You see that little slot? And you put your slot in here. And this is where you get your real torque on here to get down. So always finish up with a flat bladed screwdriver to get that real tight. You want these always to be super tight, and then you can put it back together. Now, this type of plug is called an armored plug because it has the steel case that goes around here. Now, always take the time and make sure that this is a strain relief here, that these are really tight here. Now, what happens is you'll have about a ½ inch of this screw hanging out. So what I like to do is cut that trim it, a little bit less because you don't want those sticking out. They always wind up grabbing on something. Cut it down and then take the Dremel and smooth this out so that, there's nothing sharp here. And there's an acceptable plug here that you have. Now, this doesn't have a switch on the saw. That is an older one. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this into a switch box. Okay, here we friend of mine, Jim Phillips, who passed away many years ago, he made this, and I kind of never had the heart to tear it apart and do it upright. It's all done right as far as ground and everything, but it's kind of the way he did it on a board. Anyway, so this is a switchable box, and I have this down here. I always remember him every time I use it. But let me show you how the motor and the saw works. Okay, let's turn it on just to see what it sounds like. That is beautiful. That is beautiful. Now, it's probably hasn't been lubricated in a while, so this is what we're going to do now. We're going to take it, we're going to clean it up, take it apart, clean it up, lubricate it, and then I'm going to replace the blade, and I'm going to show you what this does and what it does. Now, I'll tell you, WD-40, we've all been using this for years. Great product. It's not a fantastic lubricant, but that's not what it's made for. Obviously, it was made for water displacement, their 40th attempt at a water displacement, but it does so many more things, and it's a really good cleaner. It really doesn't affect paint too much. I mean, it's not a harsh cleaner. And the way to buy it is in this gallon drum. You can see I paid $20 for this, but this is like equivalent to like 30 cans if you buy the aerosol. buy it in the gallon and then fill up your own bottle, and you'll save a ton of money. This stuff is fantastic. Okay, now we have the saw broken down to its three main components. We have the motor with the blade assembly. We have the arm, the radial arm that hangs out, and then we have the base. Now, this is the best way to handle it if you have to transport it, but I'm just curious at how much this thing weighs, because it is all cast, heavy cast iron. It's not aluminum, it's not zinc, it's a really good metal. Let me just weigh this. I'm going to weigh all three items separately on the scale up here, and we'll see what it weighs. The motor is 42, a little over 42.5 pounds. The radial arm weighs in at just under 40 pounds. And lastly, the base weighs in at just under 39 pounds. Okay, remove this older blade. This is a Black & Decker, and we'll talk more about this when we're installing the new Diablo blade. But first we're going to talk about the motor. We're going to be doing a lot of motors in the upcoming weeks. My good buddy Terry Benko hooked me up like you wouldn't believe, and we got a lot to talk about. But let's talk about this motor here. It's a DeWalt single phase motor. You can see it's 110 volts, 60 cycles, one phase, half horsepower, and this is a beautiful motor. What we're going to do is we're going to clean it out. It's vented on the bottom. You can see a little bit. We're going to vacuum it all out, brush it out, oil it, and then clean all these out. These are bearings here. These bearings, these 4 bearings, ride inside the channel of that radial arm, and it moves all different ways. You're going to enjoy this. Okay, you see we're cleaning everything out here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to oil. There's sleeve bushings in both sides of this motor, and they have oil caps here. And they're Preston oil caps, and you can see there's a little wick in there. Now, what you do is you basically drop some of this. This is 3-in-1. It's 20 weight non-detergent motor oil, made specifically for electric motors. But we're going to put a few drops in each end, work it in, and do it again. Let it saturate real good. It's always a good idea to have a good selection of Scotch-Brite pads, all different types, coarse. We're going to use a coarse one right now. Here we are in the column again, and you can see I'm using 50-50 here, because what this isn't just rust. This is a little dried grease and everything. You can see what happens when you take a little Scotch-Brite. This is a coarse Scotch-Brite, and you wipe it around, and you just work that 50-50 in there. The acetone and the automatic transmission fluid will raise up all that dirt, and then when you wipe it off, you can see what happens here. You can see everything comes off, and it leaves a nice smooth surface. We're not trying to make this into a showroom piece, but we're trying to get this that it operates smoothly. That's the key. Now, if you want to know why we're so enamored with this old-time machinery, let me just give you an example. Now, this is the column here, and this is the radial arm that the saw rests and guides on. Now, this column is meant to turn so that you could lock it into different angle cuts, okay? And you could see here it spins left and right. You can see what a precision fit that is. Now, in order to lock it in quickly, to get the to lock it in so it don't move when you're cutting, they have this little arm here, and this arm fits between these two butts that here, and it fits down, and this little piece slips right into there, okay, and locks it in. Now, it is so precision because you need rigidity and precision in this, and that's why I'm such a fan of Mr. DeWalt, is because look how he made this. You see here, he machined this here, and he machined these two pins, these screws with pins in it that go into there, come out, and it will squeeze in between here. And then these set screws lock this down to give you the proper tension that you might want. That is the extra step. And look how tight that machining is. You know what I mean? After all these years, it's just, this is amazing. Just to go, and anybody else would have just put a pin that's, the way the things are done now. Okay, here it is installed. Now you can see the beauty of this. Now, if I wanted to adjust the arm, a micrometer one way or the other, that it will track a little bit different. I could move this over so that it will lock in this column like it will lock in here instead of where it is now. So you can do that adjustment here, number one. But also, look how nice, like you can, I have this here that it's not falling down because I want this to be kind of, I don't want vibration knocking it free. So I have it into a nice fit here, and you could see how that works, and you could see it spins nice and easy. But when you lock this down, that's in there, it's not going anywhere. Super tight fit, beautiful. Now, real quick, I have something to show you. Mr. Pete, I learned this from Mr. Pete years ago. I had to go out and get a bunch of sets of this. I need to transfer, I have to bolt this board down to the bed here. And there are threaded holes here. Now, I need to transfer these holes to this board. Now, how do you do it and get them accurate, right? So they have this thing called transfer punches. You see what they look like here? I got a whole set of all different sizes. And all they are, I'm going to pull one out here. You can see here, it is a threaded point. So what you do is you screw these points into the holes you want to transfer, and you leave the point, because there's a little tool here that you could use, see? And you leave the point just a little bit proud of the hole, just like that. And you put all four, and let me show you how that works. Okay, I got the transfer points in these four holes here. Now, this board goes like this over here, and this one has to go like this. So what you do is you line up gently, don't push it down yet, and some of you can see where I'm going with this already, but you get this lined up here where you want your holes. You got to double check and make sure you got everything set, and when you have it set, you hold it tight, take your dead blow hammer, look at that, 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you see those holes? How cool is that? Thank you, Mr. Pete. Lyle's the man. And we're calling this project done. Oh, what a beautiful saw this is, isn't it? Let's take a look at what we did here. Everything is all cleaned up, like factory lubricated, just like it is. We put a nice little base on here, wood base, and you could see how those they match up so nice, don't they? And let me tell you a couple things about the saw and some of what it can do. And everything's trammed in. We squared it up, the blade, put a new blade on there, a nice Diablo blade. And let me show you what a radial arm saw, basically, some of the features that it has, some of the things it could do. And isn't that pretty? Let's go one by one. Okay, we made this table out of some wood I had. This must be about 70-year-old wood. I've had it for 25 years or so. I found this. Somebody made shelves out of it. I took it. Let me show you what you do now. When you want to put a piece of wood against a fence, obviously you're not going to put it all the way back there, but what you do is it's a removable fence. Move this piece back here. Put the fence here. Okay, this is a sacrificial piece, this fence. That means it's meant to be cut, and you replace it every so often. Same with the table. They're sacrificial. So when you get it down, you tighten it down a little bit like this. Now she's rock solid. And then you'll make your cut like this. You bring the saw down. I'm doing it like this here. You bring the saw down to the level you want. And then you make your cut like that. Now this is how you raise and lower the saw. And then if you are going to do a lot of operations and you wanted this extra rigid, there's a little nut back here that you can tighten up on. But that's basically how you raise and lower the saw. And this will track back and forth. And this is your cutting surface here. And now, after you finish the cut, the blade will rest in that pocket back there. We didn't make our initial cut yet. We'll do that in a minute. Next up, if you wanted to make a angle cut, what you would do is you'd raise up the lock here. This gets loosened by pulling it towards you. There you go. And now you can see this will rotate, and it has different detents. Like if you want to make a 45-degree angle cut, you would just go until that locks in there. And there it goes. When it locks in, then you would lock it, and that's a 45 cut. It would be your 45-degree cut. If you're finished making your cut, you want to return back to straight, you pull it out like this. Remember, it's all been trammed in. Now that's perfectly straight. Lock it up. you're back with a 90-degree cut. That's how easy Another type of cut you might want to make is called a bevel cut. That's where you put a bevel on a piece of wood. Now, to do that, you release the lock here. You pull out the detent here. And you pull it out, and then when you do, the motor will drop down. And watch the detent. When it pops in, that'll be a 45. You lock in your lock again, and now you have a 45-degree bevel. You can also make compound cuts where you can put a bevel and an angle by now moving the arm over. So, and you can also, with a certain planing attachment, you could remove the blade, put on the planing attachment, pull out the detent, and go to a full lockdown like this, where you could plane wood. You could plane the surface of wood. You can also do dado cuts from the side. There's, you know, a multitude of operations that this can perform, because that motor swivels all different ways. You might want to do is ripping wood. That's where you rip wood the lengthways of a piece of wood. Now, to do that, you want to turn the motor. You could turn it either this way for an inside rip or this way for an outside. So let's say we had a wide piece of wood we wanted to rip. That would be considered an outside. So you loosen up the handle here. There's a little cog here. You pull up. You got to pull it back to this area here, and then it will snap in. That's 90 degrees, perpendicular to the fence. Now you can, let's say you had that wide and you want it to lock here. First, you lock down that piece. That won't let it spin. Once you get the right width of wood, then you just lock this little detent down, and now that's solid, and you could run your wood that way. Obviously, the blade would be a little bit lower, but that's how that. What do you say we make our first cut with this saw in probably 30 years or so? First thing we got to do is cut our sacrificial fence. So what we'll do is we'll turn the saw on and cut that little slot in there. Boy, she sounds beautiful, doesn't she? And we'll make our scribe line so we know where we're at. Now, every cut that you want to make, you just line up with this little scribe line here, like this. We're going to take about a ½ an inch off here. We'll start it up. There we have our cut on plywood. Plywood is traditionally splinters, and you can see both sides. Really nice, no splintering. Just a beautiful cut on this type of ply. It's not a really an ideal ply to cut, but you can see how that works. Radial arm saws really shine is making dados. Okay, so if you want to do that, you would raise this up here, the saw, until whatever height you wanted your dado to be, and we'll cut a little dado in there, and I'll show you what that looks like. Now, here's a dado we just made real quick. Now, normally they have special blades for that. You can stack a few blades together, but this here, you see how quickly we made that. Now, this will fit right in here. You can see a nice fit. That is absolutely acceptable. And then you would glue that in, and you can make shelves. You can make whatever you have. That's what a dado's for, but interesting. Okay, huh? So in closing, special thanks to my anonymous friend, Brian O'Hare, for that beautiful saw, and you can see it still works today the way it did. DeWalt made such fantastic stuff. The problem is that today, with the compound miter boxes and you know, miter saws they sell, it's usually a better way to go. It doesn't take up a lot of room, and you know, these things can be a little bit tricky to get used to, take some learning curve, you know, but it's totally interesting saw. You can do a lot with it, but you have to be very careful. Anyway, thanks so much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care now. Bye-bye.